Now, what about the other bloke kind of under the pump a bit, Bradley Arthur? They had a tough old night on Friday. I was at that game, and they actually played reasonably well first half, but second half they just got blown away.
Well, no, did they? Or did they get blown away when Maika Sivo got?
Well, yeah, I suppose they did. Yeah. Still second half.
Yeah, but as in, it was really at that point where the game was sort of still there to be won. Yeah. And Maika Sivo,
stupid.
Elbows Garrick in the face a couple of times.
He went twice too, he didn't go once, he went twice.
Yeah.
And Brad and Clint Gutherson were pretty scathing, and Mike were in the press conference afterwards. I don't blame them. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, he was brought back into NRL this week, wasn't he, after being dropped for the last few?
And he had a good game up to that point. I mean,
absolute brain explosion.
He scored a couple of tries, and he looked like the old Maika Sivo, but he ruined any hope they had to win in that football game with just an act of stupidity,
and that's sometimes that team can be guilty of those kinds of acts of stupidity, and they had everything to play for, the Eels, after the week that the coach had endured, and then for Sivo to come up with a play that really their heads went down after that, and that's when the scoreboard sort of blew out. So it's interesting one, because I mean, when he's on, like you said, Maika Sivo evolved, and I don't know how many, it's not like they've got incredible depth in the outside back, so even if he is dropped, who comes in? Someone like Sean Russell, who's just like one man in, one man out. It's not necessarily an improvement on Maika Sivo. So I don't know, I think he's, right now, Brad Arthur probably has a bit more job security, has more job security than JD.
Yeah.
But if they don't make the finals, then I think it's a completely different conversation, and I think Brad Arthur would know that.
I'll tell you, it went well for Parramatta, the young halfback.
I was just going to say, so good to see him in what he could do at NRL level. We've talked about him for so long.
Is that your guy, Sanders?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Reedy's talked about him for so long, just his number one fan, and you can see why.
Yeah, and he defended well. I mean, second half, Olakwatu wore him down a bit, as he would most people, Hamole Olakwatu, but, defensively he had a red hot go, and he didn't overplay his hand. I thought it was a really mature performance from a kid who's, I think he's 19, Ethan Sanders, so I don't know where he's been previous 3 weeks, but that's another time.
He's been learning how to defend in reserve grade.
What do we think about Brad? There's that silly Maika Sivo stuff, just dumb.
Look, and you could, Gutho's reaction there in the background, he knew it was a big call for their team. So,
what do we think about Brad?
I love Brad as a coach. I think he's just as a person, I like him a lot.
Yeah.
I like that he's so upfront and honest. We've talked about it before, how does a team just get, a voice just becomes white noise to them after a certain amount of time. There's only so much you can tell them, and there's only so much you can teach them, and I think that expires after a certain amount of time. I would love to see him and what he's capable of
at another
potentially
club?
Somewhere else.
And I think Brad will get a job somewhere. Well, he will get a job somewhere else.
He's a great coach.
He's done it for a long time. I'm just looking at their draw for the next 3 weeks, and it's horrific.
The Eels?
Yeah.
Yeah, then they have the Broncos. Who's next?
Broncos Storm.
Oh, well, there you go.
And then they go south, which is a bit of a softer game for them. But they should have Mitch Moses back. Look, I think they're hopeful Mitch will be back potentially, at a squeeze for the Broncos.
This week?
No, they got the bye this week.
Oh, they got the bye this week.
After that, I think they're hopeful maybe the Broncos, although I think that's probably unlikely. But I think they're reasonably confident he'll be back for that Storm game. There's no doubt they miss Mitch. I mean, he's their general, their orchestrator. But if they lose those 2 games, they'll drop to, what do they drop to then? 3 and 5, or 2 and 5 is it? They'll drop to 3 and 7 if they lose those 2 games.
Yeah, they're 3 and 5 at the moment.
Yeah, so 3 and 7. Is there a way back from there, you reckon, for Brad, or what?
I don't know. I don't know. My gut feeling is if they don't make the 8, then his job is really under the pump.
Yeah.
And there was a story as well over the weekend that Zach Lomax wanted a coach's clause in his contract, and the club denied it. And not to say that indicates anything, but it sort of does. The club sort of, one of their more important marquee signings in a couple of seasons, for the club to say, we're not going to, hinge any of that on who the coach is going to be over the next 3 or 4 years.
I reckon you can read too much into that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I just reckon that's just the club saying. I don't think it would matter who the coach is. Like, I don't think they would do that. You know,
Well, I think, I do agree that you can sometimes maybe read too much into it, but Brad Arthur took a very active role in this.
Did.
You know, he invited him to his house and all this sort of stuff, and so, you could also read it, you know, the other way.
Yeah.
So, but I think it all depends on whether they make the finals. If they can't win, you know, the Broncos and the Storm game, they're probably too far gone at that point, even with Mitchell Moses back.
Yeah.
But also, they should be a better team than to lose Mitchell Moses and struggle the way they're struggling.
We were going to talk about their forward pack.
Yeah.
Like, have a look at that forward pack. It's stacked full of representative players. Yeah. At the moment, would any of them get picked for any representative?
Well, they're a hope because I reckon New South Wales is one of their deficiencies is their middle, their props.
Middles. Yeah.
You know, Payne Haas will be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then where do you know, Jacob Safidi's now looks like he's going to be out.
Yeah.
They don't have a million options. Is Stefano maybe?
Stefano, Mitch Barnett.
Mitch Barnett's been outstanding, but you know, Junior and Reg are probably in consideration because they just don't have a million front rowers.
Yeah, but they don't.
But they aren't playing great.
They're not at all.
Maybe Paseka.
So in that game, I was having a look at stats before. Jermaine Hopgood was the only forward in the Parramatta side to make over 100 metres.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Queenslander.
Another
Queenslander.
But that is an area where they've struggled, you know, and that sort of big forward pack that they have, like even Sean Lane on the edge is a massive human being.
Yeah.
It only works for them when those forwards are on top and getting a roll on. Otherwise, it's just, you know, they've just got no go forward, and it makes it impossible for somebody like Dylan Brown, who isn't naturally the kind of guy that gets a team around anyway, to do their jobs. And I think as well, they're probably sometimes let down by the fact that their outside backs aren't as prolific in terms of, you know, yardage out of their own.
They don't
pitch
in
50
as much as probably
and
they
kick
should.
returns and like setting up sets. So they're probably losing a bit of go forward there. So, you know, instead of the outside backs taking the first couple of tackles, the forwards end up doing more work than what, you know, what the forwards in better sides do. So yeah, it's a problem for them.
Yeah.
And because of that, a problem for New South Wales, because you're right, they don't really have any forwards. But I don't know, like they're so out of form though, unless they, you know, put out a brilliant performance against the Broncos and the Storm and whoever's next. I'd be shocked if Madge went that way.
Yeah.
I would also be shocked.